Night one of the WCC tournament is complete. San Diego has moved on. Welcome all into another episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Yes, indeed, the Toreros, the last place Toreros, the 11th seeded Toreros, do move on as they did win their opener of the WCC tournament against Pacific 81-77. We'll get into the details of that one and then, of course, preview what we're going to see against LMU. Also, the other matchup on Friday is the 8-9 game, Pepperdine against Portland. Also dive into that. So again, we're kicked off, we're tipped off for the WCC tournament. We do have at least the first result, and kind of called it. I did think that this first game was going to go to San Diego, despite the fact that they have struggled really all year long. But this matchup against Pacific really it played in their favor, at least when I was reading it at the very beginning, thinking about what San Diego did against Portland the other night, and then also kind of the struggles the Pacific has had, not only in this particular matchup, but also just some of the struggles that they have had as of late. But let's get into it. So this game really was back and forth all game long. This was a matinee affair, 2:30 start time at the Orleans Arena. And while this game wasn't the prettiest of games, it was definitely a competitive game. 12 ties, 21 lead changes. The two teams, San Diego and Pacific combined for 38 turnovers. Points off turnovers, San Diego with 25, Pacific with 20. The Toreros trailed by double digits in the first half and were able to chip away a bit to cut that down to 6 before the break. Both teams took a ton of free throws in this game. There was a lot of trips to the free throw line. And San Diego did have a bit of the edge there, 27 of 30 from the line, 90%. Pacific was 23 of 30, not all that bad, but enough of a difference. Cody Cluett, who has been playing well as of late, he showed up again in this game. 20 points for him, 9 for 9 from the free throw line. It felt like every time San Diego needed a bucket to kind of inch their way back into this game, he was able to deliver. Tony Duckett had 21 to lead San Diego, 7 of 14 from the field. Again, he's also been playing well as we've gone deeper and deeper into the season. Jamerson, 18 and 8. Elias Ralph, 23 and 11, 9 for 16 from the field for the Tigers. Elijah Fisher was slowed down quite a bit in this one, 10 points, 2 of 7. And Pacific really just could not find a way to close this game out. They had several opportunities to really kind of shut the door on San Diego and just could not do it. Some of those late game turnovers cost them. Some silly mistakes from Pacific really kind of turned the tide late in this one. But San Diego does move on in this one. They will play LMU on Friday. That game will be at 8:30. They are the nightcap of those two games. Pepperdine and Portland will be the first game of the night. And the two games both on ESPN Plus starting at 6. And so let's take a look at San Diego and LMU. This matchup, the Lions did sweep the season series 2-0. The two games, LMU won 77-70, 78-62. But these two teams do feel like they're at least running in different directions. San Diego has now won 2 in a row, beating Portland the other night, beating Pacific, albeit, yes, the two opponents are not great opponents, but they have won the last 2 games, and they have done it in close game scenarios. They've done it being able to close out games in various fashions. And LMU is coming into this game having lost 4 of its last 5, 2 of its, and has 2 and 6 over their last 8 games, both of the wins coming against Pepperdine. And also, this is a team in LMU that has been very different away from Gersten Pavilion. They are overall 5 and 8 in games away from from their home gym. And they are 3-8 in true road games, and it's 2-0 in neutral site. They did win the 2 games at the Cancun Classic. But overall, when you look at LMU, they've been one of the better defensive teams in the league at home, but when you take them on the road, this is when we have seen this team struggle. And you see the stark contrast in just the opponent's points per game on the road versus at home. When you look at what Pepperdine does, what LMU does at home they are a team that scores 73 points a game, and they allow 69 a game, which 69 is not a great number, but they've had a good number of games where they're holding teams into the 50s. St. Mary's hit the road just there the other night, and they were held to 58 points, albeit the Gales still won that game. But then points per game when they are away from home. LMU allows 72 points per game, 72.6 points per game. So this does jump up 3 points per game. And then their offense also starts to leave them as well when they get on the road. And they've been only scoring a little less than 66 points per game away from Gersten Pavilion. And that is problematic. This is a team that has not really been able to take their act on the road. They are 5-8 overall in those games, and they need the offense to travel, and it just has not come with them. Myron Amy has been good in the matchup against San Diego. He's been averaging 16.5 in those 2 matchups. Tony Duckett, his big night, the 31-point game we talked about yesterday, that was against LMU. And he gets to see them one more time in a matchup. He didn't play as well in the second matchup, but in that first one, we got to see the best of the potential of Tony Duckett and what that freshman has been able to bring so far this season. I mean, it feels like LMU should win this game, but there are questions about their ability to do what they need to do on the road. And they have a ton of senior leadership on this squad, and you would anticipate that would be able to carry them through against a team, especially that is so young, like San Diego. You would expect Caleb Stone Carrawell to be able to hold it down. You would expect Will Johnston to show up in a big moment, for Alex Merkvelazzi to show up in one of those moments as well. This team has a ton of veteran leadership that should know how to close out games early in a tournament setting like this. And they did do well in a tournament setting a few months back in that Cancun Classic. They did win the 2 games, beating Belmont, beating Oakland. So it's not like that they are inexperienced or don't have success in a scenario like this in a tournament setting. I would think that going into this one, again, LMU is my pick to come out of this one, but San Diego is riding with a little bit of momentum. They did play at least offensively well. They scored 81 points in this game. They were able to get to the line fairly often. They did turn the ball over a lot, and that's going to be something that the Toreros are going to have to clean up. And that is something they're going to need to take care of that, but also keep this offense rolling, because the San Diego squad has not been a good shooting team all year long. I talked about it in the preview for their game against Pacific, that this San Diego squad, I mean, they shoot less than 30% from 3. They are about a 40% field goal shooting team as a squad. This is not a team that you're used to seeing scoring 81 points per game. And I wouldn't necessarily expect to see it on a second consecutive day. But LMU's defense has not lent itself to do well away from their building. If LMU plays the way they normally do on the road, San Diego's going to be in this game for a lot of the contest. But if LMU can bring that defense back and show a little bit more and bring the offense with them, this is an LMU squad that should have no problem taking care of business like they have in the first 2 matchups of this series. They should be able to move on. The winner of this game will get Washington State on Saturday. And for the Lions, it's handle your business. There's no reason that they should not be able to take care of San Diego, play good enough offense, play good enough defense. They take care of the ball well. I'm not too concerned about how LMU is going to be on the turnover front. I'm not too concerned about what they're going to look like on a rebounding front against the San Diego team. It really is just shooting well enough to advance in this tournament. Now for the first matchup on Friday, Pepperdine and Portland. This one is going to start at 6, also ESPN Plus, and much like the matchup we just talked about, Portland dominated this matchup and very much dominated this matchup. They swept the season series and won both games by 20, 87-67, 84-64. Portland has been playing well as of late, 5-3 since the beginning of February, 80-plus points in 6 of those 8 games. Chris Austin talked about him a couple episodes ago, how he has been on a little bit more of a roll. He has been in double figures 11 of the last 12 games, including 20 or more points in 4 of those contests. Max McKinnon, who was named to the All-WCC second team, is averaging 14 points for the season, but over the last 6, he's averaging nearly 19 points per game. So we've seen as the team has made a jump, Max McKinnon has also made that jump as well. This is a Portland team in the last matchup when these two teams saw each other, went 16 for 17 from the free throw line. So they're getting to the line a lot. They also were able to hold Pepperdine to 5 of 18 from 3. Portland's on a roll right now. Portland is a team I also think can be a bit of a sleeper in this tournament. The offense has been there. They've also matched up well with a couple of the teams that they are going to see. Obviously, talked about the sweep here. They split with Oregon State. They did not beat Santa Clara, but I think that they have at least a shot to kind of mix things up with the Broncos if they were to advance that far. And at least in this matchup, I'm also looking at the fact that Pepperdine has also not been playing well on their own. This is a team that has lost 5 in a row. They're allowing 92 points per game in that stretch. And in 5 of the last games, they've also allowed opponents to shoot 50% or better. This is a matchup that has, again, it's been largely one-sided, and Pepperdine's not playing well at this moment. Even though we've seen them put up some very good offensive nights, they have obviously a fair number of weapons. Butka has been really good. Todorovic has been really good. Mo Odom is one of my favorite point guards to watch in the WCC. But it really just feels like this is a game that Portland should be able to handle pretty easily, pretty handily. We've seen it in 2 games. By 20. Portland's been pretty consistent with this game, with this matchup. So I'm looking at this one. I think we're going to see the Portland offense continue to roll. I think they're going to play good enough defense against this Pepperdine team. And they're just going to cause some mismatches that Pepperdine is just not equipped to handle at this stage, even though I do think Pepperdine overall for the season has had some good moments and has had some opportunities that have been near misses. Obviously, talking about Washington State at Washington State, that should have been a win. They're also dealing with the Gonzaga game early on in conference play. That was another game that they were kind of knocking on the door. Ed Schilling has this team, I think, pointed in the right direction overall. Going into next year, this is a team that is, hopefully, if they can keep some of the pieces that are building block pieces around, this is a squad that is going to look better a year from now, is going to continue to grow, and I think is at least going to have a shot to knock on the door of that mid-tier of the WCC and get out of kind of this cellar as as you might call it, of the league. Now, one thing I do want to do, talking about this, like talked about Pepperdine and what they could look like next year. I also want to talk about Pacific a little bit here too, because obviously their loss on Thursday night is the end of their season. And this was a team that I thought not like very highly of, but I thought this was a team that had a ton of potential going into the year, was going to be much improved, was going to be a tougher out for a lot of WCC teams. And while the record for them does not look, obviously did not end well for them, this is still a team that was improved. When you think about where they were a year ago, this was a team that didn't win a league game at all last year. And they did win, they only won 4 this year. But when you look at the 4, that is where you start to see the potential. The fact that they swept Washington State, and of course, going to continue to say, like, those 2 games said a lot about what Pacific has been able to do, the work that they've clearly have put in, the system that Dave Smart is establishing there with the Tigers is starting to take shape, is starting to look a little bit more like a program that's moving in the right direction. But they're limited by their talent right now. And that is something that we will see how Pacific is able to handle in the offseason. There is a lot of room for growth on this squad, but there's also, you look at some pieces that if they can keep them around, there's some you can work with here. Lamar Washington being a junior, that is a solid piece to be able to build around as this squad continues to get better into next year and grows into the Dave Smart era. Pacific did end up finishing 10th. I did think maybe they would finish a little bit higher. I think I had them maybe 2 spots higher at 8 going into the year. But there wasn't a whole lot of difference between the Pacifics, the Pepperdines, and maybe those 2, because like San Diego really kind of like took a huge backseat during the regular season. Portland, I think, started to show a little bit more of the promise that we thought they might have a year ago, even though a ton of new pieces for the Pilots. So it's not like we're looking at apples to apples with them. But for Pacific, for Pepperdine, these 2 teams, I think, have shown a lot of growth from what we saw a year ago. I think because a year ago we looked at these teams or at least with Pepperdine, it was a team with a ton of talent, but no results to show for it. It didn't seem like there was the system to really kind of set up for success. Ed Schilling looks like he's setting that system up. Dave Smart looks like he's setting that system up. We've started to see just the growth in what is capable at Portland over the course of this season. It didn't start great, but again, the last month or so, it's looked at least pretty decent to be able to pick up some of these wins against the bottom half of the WCC, even a game against an Oregon State who's in the top half of the WCC. So we're starting to see a little bit more from the Portlands, the Pepperdines, the Pacifics, and that's something as we look at the tournament setting that if you can start to see the emerging stars, you can start to see who might be the guys who they can build around. That's when you can start to have a little bit of optimism and maybe some excitement about what these programs might be able to do going into next year, which obviously is going to be a very interesting year in the WCC, with the fact that it is the last year for Washington State and Oregon State, the last year for Gonzaga, TBD on St. Mary's, the first year for Seattle, a lot of movement going into next year. But on the court, there's still going to be a lot of opportunity for these teams at the bottom to try to climb their way back out of the hole and get back to being more competitive and getting more of these wins. Because I think we started to see the competitiveness show up more often than not in these games as we got even deeper and deeper into the regular season. But we also can see some of the guys who could end up being future all league first team guys, all league second team guys who are just starting to grow into their college careers. All right, well, that'll do it for this episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast. Reminder, we will be doing an episode every day as we get deeper and deeper into the tournament. So tomorrow we will have another episode as we start to preview the matchups that Washington State and Oregon State will have in that third round matchup, which will be the penultimate as we get into the quarterfinals. As we see the 3-4 seeds on Sunday, 1-2 on Monday, and of course the championship game on Thursday. So the tournament has started. San Diego has advanced. They continue their season. Pacific is done. And we have Portland Pepperdine in the 8-9 game, and it will be the 7-11 game with LMU and San Diego. All right. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Follow along on social media at Post by Zach. And we will catch up tomorrow to preview those third round matchups in the WCC tournament. Until then, have a great one, and I will catch you later.